Hey everyone, and welcome back. This episode is going to focus all on my experience as a conductor on the Disneyland Railroad. So without further ado, let's get started. And if you're new here, welcome. I am your host, Royce Alcozer. I am so excited to share with all of you my journey as a conductor on the railroad at Disneyland. It is a dream come true of mine to have been able to do this job. It's one of those jobs where you see it in the park, but you don't know how they get there, and you just really never think in a million years, at least I didn't, that I'd be able to say all aboard, take guests on journeys in not only the original trains that Walt used, but also the Lily Bell. And I just have so many fun memories, and I am going to share all of them with you. But first and foremost, I am going to start with the training. Most people wanted this attraction as a second, but they were getting it for thirds and fourths. I ended up emailing the manager and saying, hey, this is a dream of mine. Can you please take this into consideration and give it to me as a second attraction? The next week on the schedule, I remember it said X Steam, which means like training for steam trains. I cried. I was so excited. And I came home. I remember telling everybody I'm getting trained on steam trains. It was just so surreal. Even getting the costume, you have a very traditional conductor's outfit with the hat and the vest and the long sleeve shirt, and it's very, very thick, and I'll get into the whole issues with my experience with that costume later. But it was really cool because in the costuming at Disneyland, I didn't know really like, okay, how do I get the hat? So the hat piece, the actual hat, was separate from the medallion that says conductor, that's silver. You had to get a special checkout code for that, and they had to put it together for you. So there was so much that went into even the costume. But day one of training was so fun. I got my costume and we sat down. It was just me and one other person, and I was trained by an amazing conductor named Billy. And it was really early in the morning. He basically was telling us, hey, this is kind of like what we're gonna do for the next 5 days. And the person that I was being trained with, I think her name was Kristen or Christine. She had already worked on the railroad for years, and she had left the company, and then she just had come back. So for me, I got a lot of one-on-one because he pretty much trusted her. She worked there before him, and he remembered her. So he was always saying like, okay, do you remember? Okay, I'm just gonna focus on Royce. And he was so amazing. I think my trainer's name was Billy, and I think he's still there. Very, very nice man. And day one, you basically just kind of like Jungle Cruise, you get this big binder. They kind of give you an overview of, okay, we're gonna be walking the tracks. We're going to be reviewing each train and each one that it entails. And it was a lot to take in. One thing that I will say is my shoes were a mistake, but during that time, and we're talking, this was 2012, 2013, Disneyland used to have a extremely strict physical appearance guideline. It's nothing like today. When I walk through the park, I'm like, wow, you people are getting away with murder. I see not only tattoos exposed, but hair long, hair touching collar, shoes aren't polishable. I mean, it is just insane. So I don't want to hear any complaints from them because they were so strict with us. And I feel like, you know what, self-expression is very important, and I'm glad that they were able to kind of ease up some of those restrictions because it was terrible. And one of the restrictions was you had to have polishable shoes. So I just got like a really nice pair of pretty much almost dress boots. And day one of being a conductor, you had to walk the track. That means we had to walk on the rocks around the entire Disneyland resort. My feet were killing me. I can still remember the blisters. I was so sore, but it was also really fun to like walk the perimeter of Disneyland. It was just very overwhelming to walk the full track and being told, okay, this is zone 4, this is zone 5, this is, you can't evac guests here because there's a bridge or there's nowhere for them to go here. And it was just a lot of information that they were like pouring into me. Basically, you walk the track and then you learn the ropes by doing, and that's something that I'm a very hands-on type of guy. So we hop onto the train, and okay, so with steam trains, there are usually only 2 conductors on the train at once. When you were able to stand outside the train and look, you were able to not only make sure people were seated, but it was just a lot more fun experience, opposed to now where I was kind of in that last generation where I got trained outside the train and inside. They were still swapping the cars. And I remember you start out at the rear of the train, the rear conductor, and that's kind of like the MC saying, hey, welcome aboard the Holiday 5 on the Disneyland Railroad. Please remain seated at all times. We'll be on our way shortly. All aboard. That's basically the rear view conductor's job. And then also when we're approaching a station, we're approaching Main Street Station, home for your stops of New Orleans Square, Critter Country, with attractions such as the Haunted Mansion, Pirates of the Caribbean, Walt Disney's Enchanted Tiki Room, and more. Don't you love how I'm still it's like a muscle memory. And I remember you had to not only memorize all of that, but you still had to make sure people remain seated. And the front conductor also had a mic in case somebody wasn't seated and they can see further down in the first 2 cars. And then the first conductor's job, they had the earpiece, or now they just have like a little radio, and they were responsible for hearing calls. And if the roundhouse or the lead was to tell you, okay, hold at Toontown Station, hold at Tomorrowland Station, they were the ones responsible for that. Or to tell the next train, hey, we have some wheelchairs coming up, or there's a huge line for this, you know, to make accommodations. It was a very much a communication role, and you two worked in tandem with one another. When you get to a station, okay, I need to start over. When you get to a station, you as the front and rear conductor are supposed to count how many people are getting off in your zones. So as the rear conductor, I open the gate, I'm doing a rough count of how many people I see exiting my exit gate. And the front conductor, who gets off and walks all the way to the loading gate, has to do a rough count of how many people he sees. And that's very, very complex and very, very hard, because you are not only doing a rough estimate, but then sometimes people that are in the back rows move to the front, and that's completely understandable. You just have to look at rows and kind of do a rough count, 5, 6, 9, 12, and then you have to add it up in your head. Somebody that's not good at math, that was very hard, so I would just randomly say 23, 49. As a conductor, you're also trained on all the whistles and what they mean with the locomotive drivers. So I only had one whistle once, and that basically means like the train can't go any further, and it's kind of like an emergency stop. That happened to me during training. That was so stressful. 4 whistles, I believe, means that the locomotive driver needs to speak to the conductor, and 2 means, okay, we're moving. I guess 3 means back. I don't know. I only went in reverse 1 time during the entire time I was there, and it was very fun. And we also actually went around the entire park without stopping, very fast. The trains can actually move so much faster than the speed that they go with guests, and it's very fun. It's also very, very scary, especially when we used to hang out outside the train. It used to be zooming through. It was scary, especially at night around Rivers of America. The Rivers of America, when I worked the train, was the old rivers, and it was so much more established. The trees were huge. It was a lot bigger and a lot darker, and it used to be so cold. I remember around the river, and it was just like kind of eerie. And by the way, if you don't know where the ducks sleep at Disneyland, that's where they sleep. Or at least that's where they slept. I don't know if that's still where they sleep, I assume, but they slept all on the rocks. Now you know. But so yeah, it was a lot of fun during training, and then you take guests around the park. It's such a fun job. You start out the rear, and then you go into the front, and then usually you should be bumped off and work on the Main Street Station, and then you should be bumped out for breakfast or lunch. Sometimes you have to do 3 trips. It's kind of risking it because every trip's 20 minutes. So it's definitely a very fast-paced job. The day goes by so fast, and it's also so much fun. This is one of those jobs where I really enjoyed it because I wasn't sitting in an attraction pressing go. Load, close gate. I can't stand that. A lot of people love Indy, and I got to work Indiana Jones too, and I'll be making a video of that shortly. I didn't hate the job. It was very fun to work, but it was also very, very intense. And being a conductor was a little bit more like of a carefree. It wasn't carefree, don't get me wrong. You had a responsibility, but you didn't have so much stress on your shoulders. It was basically just going in circles all day, and it was so much fun. I loved the team. I worked with some of the most amazing conductors. They had been there for 20 plus years, and I loved how everyone's all aboard was different. Some people, like I remember his name was Tom. It was so calming. It was all aboard. Like, it was just so nice. My all aboard, are you ready for this? Here it comes. All aboard! That was it. And it was just so much fun to practice that and to practice your spiel, and you really got the hang of it, usually within 2 to 3 weeks. And I just fell in love with that job. And also you got to take people on Lily Bell trips, especially some VIPs. I won't say certain names, but you take them around, and it was just fun. There is a jacket in the Lily Bell that Walt used to wear when he used to smoke, so he wouldn't smell like smoke. That has a specific name. I have no clue what it's called, but Royce tried it on. Just saying. And there's also like some really fun family albums of Walt with his wife Lily, and the carpet and just kind of like the drapery inside of the Lily Bell matches perfectly Walt's apartment in Main Street. And during my college program experience, we were able to go up to Walt's apartment, and that was just such a fun experience as well. I need to make a video on that because Royce did something in there that changed his career forever, and I am just so overwhelmed with magic. That's the only word there is to it. But anyways, back to steam trains. And you know what, to wrap up the video, I would just say if you've never had a Tinder ride, go to Main Street and ask to ride the steam train locomotive up front with the locomotive driver. It's really a fun experience, and I think that everyone should do it. And just being a conductor on Walt Disney's original railroad was such an honor, and it's something that everyone always will ask. If they read my resume, they'll always ask about it. And I've gotten to ride the train at Disney World and Disney Paris, and I'm gonna say that Disneyland truly is the most magical. Now, it took the first left turn it ever has with Galaxy's Edge, and I think it really just got that much more beautiful with that expansion. And I think that the railroad is an attraction that is not only opening day, but it will never leave. Every theme park, even every like fair or carnival, usually they have a train, and it really isn't a Disneyland day without riding the steam trains. So if you haven't, go ride that steam train. It's so much fun. Ride Holiday 2. It is the red train. It's usually pulled by the EP Ripley. It's my absolute favorite train to have not only operated, but to be on. It's also the fastest. All right, everyone, that is going to do it for this episode of Imagine with Royce. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button and also ring that bell icon. That way you're notified whenever I upload a new video. I hope you all have a wonderful day. And also remember, everyone, not only to follow your dreams, but to chase them.